oftentimes the team members that I've had that struggle with that are really high anxiety people. And it's just like the worst could happen, and I'm just like, you know what? Let's just go do what the worst will happen. And I have them do an exercise where they go do something where they know they're going to be told no.
As stimulation.
Yeah, like they just know this person's going to say no. It's the worst case scenario is about to happen. It's not so bad.
Get ready, drop the confetti. Drop the confetti.
Welcome to Remarkable Minds, hosted by Daniel Stark Leaders. Here we share insights for professional growth. My name is Claudia Yanez. I do marketing and sales here. And joining me today is Wes Cagle, our Chief Operating Officer, and Brittany Roberts, our Associate Director of Operations. How you doing, ladies?
Hey.
Awesome.
How you doing? If you love me some Joey. All right. I love the topic for today. It's on emotional waste.
It's your favorite topic.
It's one of my favorite topics, mostly because I have been working really hard on this one for the past couple of years, and I still stumble, and I gotta always come back to focus on my energy levels because it's the one that just steals it. It just comes like a thief in the night and steals your energy, and you don't even know that that's what's happening. So let's get into it. Let's first define emotional waste. What does that look like for you? What has been your experience on a personal level?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's when I take feelings over facts.
Oh, that's a good answer.
Yes.
For me, it's when I start taking on other people's emotions and they start affecting my emotions.
Oh,
I think that's what that looks like for me.
absolutely. And we'll get into setting some good boundaries there and the things that we've done to overcome that. And I think for me, it is the venting or the complaining or something. And those are ones that, oh my goodness, in my realization of emotional waste have come to realize how selfish that can be when you do that unto others, because you just, in your venting or in you complaining, you unloaded yourself to feel better, and then you leave, but you just drop that big,
Pile.
pile of crap.
Big pile of emotions on someone
On
else.
somebody else.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, guys, I'm good. I'm leaving
Thank
now.
you, bye.
That's right. And it's not really solution focused. I think maybe in the past it comes from needing validation or needing to be heard or understood, something along the lines of where that came from. And so like I said, a lot of work has gone into emotional waste, but let's talk about it. We've seen it in ourselves, emotional waste, but now we've gotten really good about seeing it in others and our team members. Let's talk about why that's so critical for us to be able to help people identify what's emotional waste and then help them identify it, become very self-aware, and then give them tools, right? So that they can see when they're doing that and then put in some healthy boundaries so they can be more productive with their energy.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me in my personal journey, it was really hard the first 2 years of leadership, just taking on somebody would say, I feel like this isn't getting done. And that was truth in my book. Then that's not getting done. I didn't have a discovery phase, and that was the missing piece. So now the tool that I have, it's I don't know that to be true yet. I need to actually go out, have a discovery phase, and get real examples. Those are the facts, right? And make sure that I do this so I can have a clear head, because that wasn't what was happening, and I was failing my team because of it.
That makes me think that we're just, again, as a culture, we're going so fast. We're moving on from one decision to another. We're, like you said, going based off of we feel this, or we make these assumptions without clarifying, or just, I love that, your discovery process, or whether it's self-reflection to get factual confirmation before moving on. And that's a really big one, because I believe we do a really great job. I know I've seen y'all do this, and I've seen other leaders do this, where we encourage people to reflect on something. Our social contract says take some cool down time.
That's right.
That's literally the first step. And that's why. It's because you don't want to drain your energy. You don't want to head a problem with just feelings. And so much of that goes into that. What about in your journey of emotional waste? What were some insights there?
Well, I think part of it was that I was getting to a place of burnout, because I was taking on everyone's things, and it was when I got really good at being curious. And so is that some of it that's Brittany's discovery phase. And it was like, well, tell me what you've done to work toward a solution. Tell me what you've done to work on this problem, where I was learning to put those boundaries in place because I am a solution oriented person. I'm like, okay, well, let's tackle this right now.
Mm-hmm.
Or they were coming and venting and I was ready to go ahead and fix the problem. And I would take that on. So I was not only taking on their emotions, but I was taking on the problem and fixing it too. So I've really learned to say, okay, well, tell me how have you worked on this problem? What have you done to fix this problem? And it has really stopped people from one coming to vent because they know they're going to get asked how what they've done to fix the problem. And so now when people come to even begin to try to vent, they already know what kind of questions they're going to get asked. So that already put boundaries in place for people, and that stopped a lot of that. After a while, they're like, oh no, I better not go in without a solution.
Oh, that's right. Like when we go and we take on other people's emotions, like this is my mom brain, like immediately, because this is the first thing I do when my children are coming and they're just full of emotions. The first thing I want to do is help regulate their emotions. And I was transferring that over to the workplace. I was like, you're not responsible to regulate other people's emotions.
That's right.
And especially when that's so harmful to you. I think people who are really great at doing this, like you said, when you have a curious mindset and by asking those questions or facilitating it, it allows them to do the self-regulating themselves by just imposing those questions, that's a really great tool. Brittany, I know that you're working on that cool down time kind of to help them, like after some sort of maybe emotional incident, gives them the opportunity to discern, to self-reflect, and there's so much to be gained there. And I think once we allow ourselves to do that, we can really look at something and see, okay, how much of this is feelings, how much of this is factual. If it's feelings based, like what is mine that I need to own? That's my own baggage that I'm bringing here. And not necessarily the other person. Maybe we're being triggered by something and you're responsible for your own triggers and how you're going to respond to that. So giving your team members toolbox, obviously critical, but we must first model that for them. And I would say for me, one of the biggest tools is that I learned here is, and you mentioned it in another episode about the power of full engagement. And I love that book. And you encouraged me to reread it again. That's always a really good advice, because when you first read books, just side note, it's like consumption first. Like I'm reading it for consumption. I'm not really in the mindset to actually apply it. And then I go reread it again. I was like, okay, now I'm actually going to apply what I learned here. So the second time I read it was so much more impactful than the first time. And obviously we're working so hard when you think about like how little time you already have to plug into your source to renew your power, and then you're just like giving it away, like easily, like currency, and so you become a lot more disciplined and just more consciously aware of the things that are just draining you. And so that was a really big tool. They have so many more tools, and I wish I remember who wrote that book.
I don't remember.
Powerful Engagement. Such a great book to have your team members read. So you said promoting self-reflection, that discovery phase. What are some other tools that people can use that we can give them resources to encourage what's really draining them on an emotional level?
I think the first step is being vocal. Is telling somebody you're feeling that way. And whenever you're able to do that, it creates comfort across the board. You know, when I'm in a meeting and I'm like, hold on, pause. For whatever reason, I just got really annoyed. I don't know why. And having a sounding board in real time, it does help. And then it makes it to where it's quick. It's a 2-second thing instead of me just sitting on it and it festering. And then I don't know why. And then if I bring it up a week later, they don't remember what happened in that meeting a week ago. And so I think being vocal is the first step.
Well, for a lot of people, they don't have the language to identify those things. And so everyone around me is irritated. They don't want to hear about this anymore, including my kids. But yes, get a feelings wheel, because you don't have the language. Most people only have 2 or 3 or 4 words to identify emotions, but it's much more nuanced than that. So if you can put language to it, then you can start, if you can identify it and figure out the source of it, then you can start to work through the emotion and solve the problem. you can get to a solution a lot faster. But most people try to avoid those things. They don't want to identify the feeling because it's associated with something negative or
That's
bad.
right.
And so they do avoid it, and therefore it lasts longer. So the longer you avoid it, the longer the emotion lasts. And that was a long lesson for me as a person. And now to try to teach other people, like, the longer you avoid it, the longer it's going to last. Just have the feeling. Sit with the feeling, identify the feeling, and let it pass. It's going to go by a lot faster. So you can Google feelings wheel, get your image and put it up. So I do make all of our new leaders get a feelings wheel, and I even make my kids. I'm like, okay, you don't want to talk about it. Let's at least identify a feelings wheel, and they're so annoyed.
I know that sounds so elementary.
It does.
To hear it, but it is actually helpful. And
It is.
No, absolutely.
People are like,
100%
I don't.
agree.
Do I need this? I'm like, you do, because
Yes,
you don't know what word it is.
Yeah, that's right. You have to have emotional intelligence to get rid of emotional waste.
Oh,
and
that's
that,
right.
You have to start back at the basics.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. And I'm going to pause because I lost my train of thought here.
I have a book for that.
When people cannot identify their feelings, or they're not being vocal about it, the things that we do see it manifesting into is passive aggressive behavior.
Absolutely.
We see the passive aggressive behavior. We're arms out, thumbs up. That's one of our core values. We're going to be curious about it. Maybe now you see a pattern, so now you're going to go ask, hey, what's going on? Like, this is what I'm noticing. And there has obviously, emotional safety is important because that needs to be established, or not they won't really open up and talk about their feelings, or they're not vocal about those things. But that's probably one of the things that I've noticed is often is the passive aggressiveness and these small little ways. I was like, just gonna keep that away and then come back and touch on that. And these people for emotional waste, like, it's not the way you would think about it, because it's not so vocal in the sense that you're venting, or you're complaining, or you're taking on.
Yeah.
It's not a very visible way, but it's harboring. It's the festering, and that is emotional waste as well.
Yeah.
And so helping them identify, like, you're giving it away to this, and try to model for them or explain, like, solution focused behavior instead. Really get to the bottom of, obviously, of the issue, but then that feedback, or it needs to be obviously constructive and help them and guide them through what a healthy resolution of this looks like. Of course, you give them the tools, but then you hold them accountable, because we have some chronic emotional, what do you call them? Emotional wasters?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Emotional
I don't know what the word.
wasters? Yeah.
I identify as an emotional waster. I'm not sure what that term is called, but we do have people like that are chronic, and they've conditioned themselves,
Yeah.
or their environment and whatever, they've been conditioned to just, in order to get your way, you just complain about it until someone does something about it. And that's not healthy.
No.
And I think our organization does a really good job of really creating and teaching people how to have healthy conversations, and really have people understand the expectations of the environment that we want to foster and preserve. And a lot of that includes very specific, like, no complaining, no gossiping,
That's right.
no drama. We lay out what the expectation is, but then through the social contract, the other part of it is, and then we walk you through it. Like, what does it actually look like, right? Take some cool down time, see it from the other person's perspectives, have a desire to reconcile, and so forth and so forth. That helps with that. Yeah. What are some ways that you've seen organizations let this go by the wayside?
I've seen it where the title matters more than the accountability. Because someone has a specific title, you just kind of let it be, and everybody else has to just deal with it. And that's not who we agree to be as people. And so when you were speaking, one of the things I was thinking of is when it doesn't look like that, when it's not gossip or drama, but it's still somebody coming with an emotional waste and what that looks like. And there was a team member a bit ago, and, you felt the heaviness of, like, the call to duty and what it was in a way that wasn't typical for him. And, I was like, what's actually going on? And so he's using me as a sounding board. And I'm like, okay, but you have to talk about what the real issue is, because holding on to that, you rob yourself of creativity. And so when we were able to actually face it head on, which he did with his leader, you realized he was really doing 2 seats, and there needed to be a second seat. But if you hold on to that, we can't grow as an organization.
I've had absolutely experiences like that with other people. And it just feels like there's so much more than what's happening
Mhm.
and digging in and not letting, and I encourage people that even if that's not your direct, person or that person that you have been entrusted with to lead anybody. And it's one of the things I love about our social contract is
Yeah.
Mhm.
because it's up, down, side, side. Everybody just holds everybody accountable. Should really go and be curious and ask those questions and move it up maybe to their team lead if someone really needs to investigate that. But there's something else that you mentioned there that I thought was really important. You said when the title matters more
Mhm.
than the accountability.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's so important. We've seen organizations where they hold on to high level managers,
Mhm.
and I'm choosing to not say leader, high level managers, high level execs who model this emotional waste and toxicity
Mhm.
that damages the production of their workforce. And because they're so scared maybe to lose that institutional knowledge, or because they're afraid to actually put in the work and build a high
That's right.
energy team, they allow that to go by the wayside, not realizing how much it's actually impacting.
Well, it takes so much time and investment in order to extract all the institutional knowledge and to hold all those people accountable and to put all the structures in place to make the organization safe. And usually the owners or the board or whatever aren't willing to put that kind of investment. And so for me, that's part of what makes us so special. And that's part of why I stay for so long, because I know that our owners are willing to put in that kind of work, that kind of sacrifice to make sure that we have that level of safety, that organizational investment in our culture, because they would never stand for that. Like, they're going to put in the work. It doesn't matter what the cost for us is. Like, they're going to have an organization that has a culture that is like that, because it is not easy to do that. And so when we go and talk to other law firms or sister firms or companies and they ask, how did you do this? Like, how did you implement this? And we start talking about all the things you have to have in place in order to have high accountability, to have low waste, or to have emotional safety, which all of this requires that you have emotional safety, and all of your leadership buys into a social contract that allows these things to happen. They're flabbergasted. They're like, you do all of that? Your owners allow all of that? You let go of a high level leader like that had all that knowledge? That, like, they cannot believe that we would do something like that. But that person was there for 10 years. That person was there for this long. Like their jaw is on the floor that we would do that. That we would hold someone that, had been in our organization that long accountable to this type of thing. Because for a lot of companies, that's seen as something like soft, where as a resume or a degree, or how long your tenure is much more important than something like this. And people just don't understand that when you have a culture of accountability, when you make sure all this emotional waste goes away, like, your productivity increases. That means your bottom line increases. And so, like, it's really hard for people to grasp, when you have an incredible culture like this and you get rid of this emotional waste, like, how much better your business actually runs.
Absolutely.
Like, they can't, like, put those things together in their head. And so, yeah, it's an investment. And yes, it's so much work every single day for the leaders in your team, and to keep it going every single day, because it's hard. It's really hard for the leaders to buy in and make sure it's scalable, and, like, there's a good structure in place that supports this kind of thing.
Yes.
But it's absolutely worth the investment, and it will grow your business and your bottom line and your revenue and your profitability. Like, it supports those things that businesses want and that they need to grow and be a good business. It just feels soft, and that's back to your emotional waste point.
Yeah. Bring it back full circle.
That's
Yes.
feelings, not facts.
That's right. Yeah. And we see the culture slowly turning where, our people that are coming into the workforce are demanding that kind of environment and that kind of culture. They want to be a part of that. And if you are an organization that does see the investment and is putting a lot of sweat equity into building that, man, kudos to you. That's hard work, and you're part of the 1%, because it's not only hard to get it there, and it's just as hard to maintain it. It's
Mhm.
a decision every single day that you're making, and I don't ever want to undermine the
Yeah.
work that goes into that.
To piggyback off of what Wes was saying, I think that, another reason other organizations don't do that, and a key point to the emotional waste, is conflict avoidance.
Oh,
Some of
yeah.
they just don't want to go talk to that person who's been there 12 years, and they just don't have that skill set, and they're not going and investing in themselves to gain it, and they're just keeping it, and it's trickling down.
Absolutely. And we see that.
Mhm.
Oh, we see that. And it always irks me a little bit. And even, y'all have held me accountable. We have all held each other
Mhm.
accountable. And when it irks me and I just get so flustered, like, why wouldn't you just, it's good to get perspective. Like,
Yeah.
again, these team members are babies, they're new, they're
They've
just
never
coming
done
in there,
that.
they've never done that. You got to teach them the way. And I know there's been plenty of times as leaders that you don't have it 100% of the time.
No, we fall
And
short.
yeah, we fall short. Absolutely. So you got to recognize when you just need to pass that baton to someone else. Like, I
Mhm.
don't have the capacity today to deal with this. I'm going to give this over to you.
Yeah.
And so that's always also a good reminder for me, and something that I've learned along the way is I don't have to be the leader to solve every single like problem or issues or go at it alone. And so that has been
Preach.
really helpful. Yes, absolutely. So you talked about emotional intelligence. You have to have emotional intelligence. So how do we do this as an organization? How do we teach this to our team members?
It's hard for me to answer that because I'm still learning how to teach that. I'm maybe a harder person to convince whether you can teach it, or
Yeah.
if people come with a base level and you can just kind of give them some tools. Like, here's a calculator.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a great conversation because we have, like you said, like I don't know if it's something that you can fully teach emotional
Yeah.
intelligence. And that's such a big word because we know
Yes.
it's a big umbrella
Yeah.
that covers so many different facets. But let's talk about regulation, emotional regulation. That's probably a
Yes.
key portion of the emotional intelligence that you need. Self-awareness, one that
Mhm.
you're actually doing it, emotional regulation. So let's just start
Yeah.
there.
I think we give our team members 3 tools. So whenever somebody's hired, we have a culture day. And what they get is they get a copy of Crucial Conversations,
Love that
a
book.
copy of Powerful Engagement, and our social contract, which on one side says who we agree to be as people, but the other side is what to do when conflict arises. And that's the base.
Mhm.
Just starting there, you will gain some emotional regulation.
Absolutely. And the other one is, again, the expectation.
Mm-hmm.
We're giving this tool. We're investing in you. We're giving you this tool. And then we have obviously professional development.
Mhm.
There's many things of where not only are you going to be responsible for reading it, we're going to talk about it. We're going to practice it. Like, we are truly going to hold you accountable because this is baseline what you need to work on to just work here, because you're working with so many different individuals and personalities.
Yeah. But those 3 tools, most people have never received any of those tools.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They don't know how to do any of those things. Like, they didn't grow up with those things. They've never talked about those things with anyone. And so
Mhm.
how to handle conflict. We just said most people are conflict averse. Like, that's just true. You don't want to hurt anyone's feelings.
Or people pleasers.
And they don't know how to do it. And so it is like a step-by-step guide. Like, literally just follow these steps and you're going to get a pretty good way there.
Yes.
And then Crucial Conversations is the book teaches you what type of words to say, like how to approach the conversation. So it is a guide for when there's big feelings that are
Be
at stake.
objective focus.
That's
Right.
Mhm.
It's like, what do I want for me? What do I want for the other person? What do I want for the relationship? And how to approach some of those more difficult conversations when it's emotionally charged. So that's one of the best books ever, because a lot of books on professional development or emotional development are kind of like pie in the sky and don't give you any like step by step. Whereas Crucial Conversation is like, no, just follow these steps and you're good to go. And it gives you tons and tons of real life examples, both personally and professionally. And that's like a life-changing book. Like, it'll help you here at DS, and it'll help you in your whole life. It'll help you in your romantic relationships, your friendships, maybe even with your parents, and some stuff you maybe needed to deal with and you weren't ready to do that. So that's a baseline. And then Powerful Engagement is I am having all this emotional dysregulation, and it's probably because I'm working too hard and I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to refuel myself. I don't know what the power source is. I don't know where my energy suck is going and how to identify that, because most people also don't know those things.
Yeah.
And so like those 3 tools are probably transformative for most of our new team members. They're like, "Oh, wow."
Yeah.
Like they're like, "Whoa."
Yeah.
So
Love
that's
that.
a huge baseline of tools for them in just how to start identifying what's happening, how to fix what's happening. And so
Absolutely. That book literally has changed my life. Crucial Conversations.
me too.
In my personal life.
I tell people
Yes.
that.
I feel like my confidence went through the roof after I read that book. And that's definitely a book I read 2-3 times. And I always go back and I look through things because there's always good nuggets in there. Like, chef's kiss to that book.
I know.
Love it. It made me so much more confident in conflict and how I see conflict. And I was like, that's just a conversation. Like,
Yeah.
no, you just go to that person. Like, something that would have been like, oh, like, because you would get in your head, you would start telling yourself
That's right.
stories and a narrative. You get yourself all worked up for nothing. And that book has just simplified it. And it just made me look at things from a completely different perspective. It definitely, like, you can't just, it's not just that book alone. Like, I had to put in some therapy work into working on those things, but it definitely brought a lot of things to the surface. But not a lot of emotional waste comes from maybe conflict or interpersonal relationships. Some of it just comes from like ourselves and like maybe in our normal day-to-day job performance. I have a person on my team. She is a perfectionist.
Yeah.
And that is emotional waste. Like letting go of perfectionism is hard work, because from that comes from ruminating, overthinking things.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the things we see most often when you have a team full of A players or just dominant personalities or perfectionists. So tell me a little bit about the tools you give them.
Yeah, so as a recovering perfectionist, hi. I think the thing I had to do first was admit that I had these higher expectations for myself than others. It took me a bit to get to that point. And then after that, I had to take myself off this pedestal I had put myself on. And that was really hard. It was going back to, the sense of identity of, what can I do to make sure I work through this? And like Claudia said, like some of it's personal work. I had to go to therapy and work through those things. But what it has done now, the transformation, what you get out of it is the same thing. I run towards conflict. I love it. I'm like, yes, let's get in the ring together. I love it. Let's have a good fight. Because the best ideas come from whenever you're able to do that and really understand each other's point of view. And with that being said, there's another side of it that I get to be silly and I'm not easily embarrassed anymore. And people get to see that, and it gives them permission to be able to not be perfect as well.
Makes you much more vulnerable.
And relatable.
I love that. Yes, and relatable. Yes. Some of the things I know I do recently in trying to help my perfectionist team members, again, they're fixating on things beyond their control. They want things they have a specific vision, is being emotionally flexible and allowing yourself or allowing the process to take shape and wherever it takes us, right? And along is like, what does the outcome actually need to have? What are some of the needs? And if it happens to meet others, or like, so we just kind of like put some parameters around it. So if it does this, are we okay with it? Can we be okay with this? Oh, yes. Okay, let's try it. Let's see. Did it break anything? Did it hurt anyone? Was the experience, and that's the other thing, like the experience for others. What was the experience for others and working with you on this? Keeping that in mind. So that has been really helpful. The other thing is just forcing let's just take it through a particular process and let's put our time and effort and letting the process take its place and let the process develop the outcome for it and step away. Like, imagine the opportunity and the capacity that's going to open up for you.
Yeah.
To grow in these other areas that you want to. Think about the things you do want to do. Like if you had time and energy to do, like what would that be? What would that look like? And let that be the goal. So what can we let go over here so we can accomplish this over here? And so changing that
perspective.
Yeah, it's the perspective, and also like the mindset to be more goal oriented to this rather than fixating over here. Let's get you over here. And so that's been helpful.
I think another thing to add to that point of it is, oftentimes the team members that I've had that struggle with that are really high anxiety people. And it's just like the worst could happen, and I just like, what? Let's just go do what the worst will happen. And I have them do an exercise where they go do something where they know they're going to be told no.
A stimulation.
Yeah, like they just know this person's going to say no. It's the worst case scenario is about to happen. It's not so bad.
Absolutely. And it's not about you, maybe.
Yeah.
It's about the circumstances or about other things beyond your control. So I think the most important things is being okay, trying not to fixate or ruminate or be overwhelmed by things that are beyond your control. And really identifying when your emotional struggle becomes extremely overwhelming and detrimental, like you need some help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need some professional help that we cannot provide, that your team leads or leaders, they can't provide you. And I hope that comes across respectful and maybe with heart, because we're not trained to be counselors.
That's
like
right.
that's not,
Yeah.
as much as we love our team and we want to be there, we also need to understand like our capacity and our ability on all fronts to be able to like really give that person what they actually need. So
Absolutely. Well, and there's lots of tools out there for perfectionism and overcoming that outside of like professional help and helping like reorient the perspective. Like, hey, is anything perfect? Have you ever experienced perfectionism? Like just helping them get curious with it. Like that isn't help reminding them that that's not a realistic expectation. Like whose expectation is that? Do you think that's my expectation? Did I ask you for perfection? What is my expectation of you? So that as their leader, they understand what you are wanting out of them. Like my request is not perfectionism. Like here is my expectation of you. Like I under no circumstance want perfectionism. I need you to do this, this, and this, and everything else I don't care about.
Yeah.
Like you need to let that go.
Yes.
We don't have time for
Let
that.
it go.
Let
Yes.
it go.
That's
Like,
right.
please. And like I think Brene Brown says, like you need to go for healthy striving instead of perfectionism. Like if you can get to healthy striving, like we always want to improve. I always can be better. Could this project have been better? Like what did we learn? Like yes to all of that.
Absolutely.
I want you to keep growing. I want you to keep being better, but I never am asking for perfection.
Yes.
Like let's work toward those goals instead of perfection.
Yes.
Can we do that instead?
Absolutely. So instead of putting your energy into the emotional ways
Yes.
of maybe complaining, overthinking, any of that, put that energy into finding creative solutions.
Yeah.
Do not vent without purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's right.
make sure that your complaints actually turn into an action plan.
That's right.
And so if you are doing those in a healthy, because we need some sort of outlet. Yes, we do need to vent from time to time. Like nobody's, what's the word? I think it's wild to assume that we don't need to vent, maybe.
Yeah,
Like,
we need sounding boards.
That's right. You need a sounding board, but it needs to have purpose,
Mm-hmm.
intentionality. There needs to be an action plan. And if you're going to go in with someone who can be also high emotion, like I like to preface the conversation like, hey, I need a sounding board. You're really good at this as well. Like I have some raw emotions. And then also like, don't share in this with me. So I don't need you to emotionally process as I'm going to emotionally process because I just need to talk some things out, make sure my mind is where it needs to be, and make sure that I have a good solution or action plan. So this is what I'm going to do. I know I do that with you often. It's like, yep, you got it. Like, okay. Like, and then I feel good about what my next steps are.
I think one of the ways we're able to be proactive about this too, as you were speaking, Wes, I was thinking about our social contract culture interview, and we asked them to bring up times there was conflict and where that was, and you find out if they're conflict avoidant, you find out if they have high anxiety or they have high expectations of themselves. And one of the questions I like to ask them is how comfortable they are in being uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because you have to be able to be uncomfortable in order to get through emotional waste.
That's right. Be exposed, feel exposed, feel, yes, that vulnerability. Absolutely. So pausing, reflecting on whatever emotional, overwhelming struggle they may be going through, having that growth mindset, having that curiosity, that discovery, self-care. So making sure we're plugging back into our sources. So these are all great ways, all great tools to give. And just reminding our leaders, and we want to build emotionally resilient team members. Like,
Yeah.
absolutely. People that can withstand struggle, conflict, that can withstand
Change.
change.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. I was like, yes, change. I don't know why change always makes people feel so like, oh, something's about to, is
Yeah.
that just, man, what the physiological effect that it
Mhm.
has on a person. So, yes, building emotional, resilient leaders and modeling that for your team members goes a long way into really making your organization healthy and very productive. So,
On that subject of change, Wes, I think one of the biggest changes our organization went through was during COVID. And it was the whole world changing. So, like, seeing our team have that tenacity and all together, like, go through that emotional waste and make sure that we were addressing the fears, because it was a scary time. We came out so much better on the other side because we were all having to push through it. And that's what happens when you are all focused together on going through change.
Yeah.
love the conversation. It's
Yeah.
one of my favorites. I want to keep talking about it, but we don't have enough time. So we'll end it there. And if you have any insights on this topic, any suggestions for any other new topics, please send those over to podcast@danielstark.com. Thank you, ladies, for joining me
Yeah.
Thank you
today.
for having us.
Yes. Until next time, stay remarkable.
Get
Oh, I
ready,
love
drop
this
the
topic.
confetti. Get ready, drop the